throughout most of the anime community's history, Bleach in particular never really had the treatment it deserved, and by far has received the least attention out of the big three, at least when it comes to Western media. And I can see why it makes sense. When you look at the big three at a first glance, One Piece is the highest selling manga of all time, and it's also the longest running shonen manga. Naruto by far was one of the most influential anime in the West, and really pushed anime and manga as a whole into mainstream Western culture. But when you look at Bleach, you can't really think of its accomplishments. If anything, most people who first hear of Bleach probably know it for being the most dropped anime of all time. So this begs the question, why is Bleach even part of the big three? And in this video I'm going to be answering this very question. If you want more content like this, then of course like and subscribe. I will try to be making more videos for this channel, and you subscribing will greatly motivate me to make more stuff like this. And with that being said, let's begin the video. So to answer this question, I will be giving multiple reasons why it is considered one of the big three. Starting off with its biggest reason, influence. If you watched or read Bleach in any way, you will notice that most big new gen anime and manga take some sort of inspiration from Bleach. For example, JJK, Chainsaw Man, and Demon Slayer all have organizations that are tasked to hunt down demons and cursed spirits. And these types of monsters aren't usually seen by the general public, which sounds very familiar to Bleach's Gotei 13, and their job in hunting down hollows. And the fact hollows can't be seen by humans. And even a lot of these curses and demons all do share the similar design to hollows. Another influential example will be its hierarchy system, having a certain group of elite powerful characters that side with the protagonist, and each member of that group having distinct personalities and all represent the peak of power in their world. In Demon Slayer they have the Hashira, in JJK they have the special grades, and in Black Clover they have damn near the same group as Bleach, magical captains with each captain having their own squad or team, which is extremely similar to Bleach's Gotei 13 and their squads. And outside of these groups, Bleach's individual characters as well have played a big role in inspiring new manga, especially the female characters. More often now you see a lot more independent and more written focused female characters, despite it being a shonen manga for boys, and Bleach has definitely played a big part in that. Characters like Yoruichi, Rukia, Haribel, and Unohana, all of them have their own independent story and help played a big part to push the overall narrative. It's not to say Naruto and One Piece don't have these types of female characters, they certainly do, but not to the degree that Bleach does. Most female characters play a more backseat role, and for the most part depend on the male characters to drive the narrative forward and make the big decisions. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. Again, this is a manga for young boys, so the authors are gonna make the guy characters appeal much more. But it is refreshing to see a female character that make their own decisions and have their own character driven arcs, and not just solely depend on the male to save them. You see this now with Mereoleona, Shinobu, Maki, Yuki, Tatsumaki, and many more. And my final example for inspiration would of course be its power systems. Haki and chakra do play a part in using spiritual power, but Bleach takes this to a much greater degree, where Shinigami, Hollows, and Quincy's, all of these characters are literally souls, and Ryatsu is the energy that projects off one soul, and a Zanpakuto, which is a weapon that most characters use in Bleach, are also souls of their own. The wielder and sword are both souls that must connect and communicate to each other to truly express their power, and with that you can achieve a much higher state. I'm of course talking about Bankai, a Shinigami's final trump card to decide the outcome of a fight. Hollows and Quincy's as well have their own versions of this, and in new gens such as JJK they have something very similar to this being domain expansion, where one chants a name and they release their final trump card to turn the fight in their favor. In fights, domain expansion and Bankai do share that very component. In Black Clover, Asta has to have a spiritual connection with Libe, an inner demon that grants Asta his anti-magic powers, very similar to the relationship between Ichigo and Zangetsu. They also had a spiritual bond that helped Ichigo grow throughout the series. And design-wise, Asta's black form is a very obvious depiction of Ichigo's hollow mask. Overall though, in pretty much any new gen, you will see a lot of Bleach's DNA inserted into these mangas. Now of course, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you everything's inspired by Bleach. That isn't the case. There are a lot of Naruto driven inspiration for these mangas as well, even other animes like Berserk, Hunter x Hunter, and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. But to say Bleach didn't take a giant part on inspiring the new generation to even start these mangas would be disingenuous. Even the authors of these mangas have admitted they took inspiration from tybw, in almost every single one too, and I'm not even kidding. Horikoshi, the mangaka of My Hero Academia, even drew his main character Deku along with Asta and Yuji posing with Ichigo, being a homage for tybw's work. This just goes to show how much they appreciate Bleach. Although it isn't well known compared to Naruto and One Piece, any author who's wanted to start their own manga has taken a look into Bleach and see how good the manga really is. Now with the first reason over, I can get into my second reason why Bleach is part of the big three, which I feel people don't appreciate enough, being the art and design of Bleach. The easiest way to identify Kubo's art is through his paneling, where his backgrounds are mostly blank. Now people would call this lazy, but in my opinion it really adds more significance to whatever is actually being drawn on panel, to show that as the main focus point. And as you see, the characters and art design designs that are being drawn are much more detailed and well drawn than most manga I've ever seen, at least in my opinion. Kubo's drawings and simplicity really adds to the show don't tell method, where it's more art focused and less dialogue focused. It really gives a much more dramatic and cinematic feel to whatever's happening in the manga. One example I can give would be in the 1000-Year Blood War arc. The Serite has been raided by the Quincy's, and every captain has been defeated by the Stern Raider, including Byakuya. Ichigo would then find Byakuya in a defeated state, which leads to one of the most iconic panels in all of Bleach: Save the Soul Society. This panel is extremely simple but gives a powerful message, where Ichigo's face is mostly blacked out by the shade and rain is falling upon him. With context, any terribly tragic moment that Ichigo has gone through has had rain being drawn in the background, and this is no different. All of his friends are most likely dead for all he knows, and Byakuya, someone who is too prideful on relying on others, especially Ichigo, is the one asking the request on saving the Soul Society, as Ichigo is the only one he can rely on to do the job. Byakuya knows full well that Ichigo would stop at nothing to protect his friends and the Serite, and he had no need in saying what he said, but the fact that he did adds so much more stakes and emotion to that panel, because Ichigo knows what this means to him. He's willing to drop his pride and truly acknowledge Ichigo for who he is. Byakuya knew this could be his last words, and in hopes those words will pass on his will to protect onto the man who does it the best. And with that, you see Ichigo's reaction. Not literally, but metaphorically. You can tell exactly how he feels. The sheer rage and sympathy he feels for Byakuya. All of this I just said being simply drawn with Ichigo being poured by rain, and yet having so much meaning to dissect. One Piece and Naruto also have these sort of moments, but not on the quantity and quality on how Bleach does it. Any Bleach arc you can name has these sort of climactic moments that give closure or give goosebumps to the reader or viewer. Paneling and art design isn't the only thing that is well made by Kubo. The design of the characters is also another benefactor of Bleach's unique style. Naruto and One Piece take place in entirely separate worlds, and the characters in that world mostly look much more different and unrealistic to real life people. Bleach of course also has these sort of things as well, but most of the main cast all mainly look and feel much more human, by having a more realistic and traditional fashion design you would see in the real world, which is a big thing Bleach is known for. Kubo is probably one of the only few mangaka out there that has these famous illustrations of his characters being redrawn in some sort of fashionable designer clothing. And going back to the inspiration bit, a lot of these modern shonen have also taken this same route that Bleach did, as having a much more traditional humanistic design is far more easier in a creative aspect, and it easily appeals to a much wider audience, especially for people who aren't really deep into the anime space. Now more than ever you see people in real life dressing like Toji or Gojo or Yuki and some other type of modern shonen character, just because the design of that character looks much more realistic and actually wearable without looking like some crackhead on the street. Outside of anime conventions, you're not going to be seeing someone wearing some QB cloak or some Dragon Ball uniform on the daily, but fashion designs from characters like JJK or Bleach look a lot more presentable to the average person, and these types of styles will be due to the impact of Bleach. And now with that, I can finally get into my final reasoning for why Bleach is part of the Big Three, which is the most obvious reason: the sales. Most people who hear of the term Big Three don't really understand where the term came from. It is due to these three mangas by far having the most sales in the longest period of time. All three of them have been around for over a decade and have made hundreds of millions of dollars for Shonen Jump, and even to this day you see all of these three mangas trending for whatever reason. And of course Bleach is no different here. 1000-Year Blood War has had the highest rated episodes of this year, and will keep doing so when Core 4 comes out. This to me is the most frustrating part when people try to replace Bleach with another series like AOT or Hunter x Hunter or something else. None of these mangas have had nowhere near the sales that Bleach did during its heyday, and even at its worst performance, Bleach still has marginally higher sales than most ongoing series today, and it's been on hiatus for almost a decade already. So for just this reasoning alone, it's obvious why Bleach is part of this trio. No manga besides Dragon Ball has had the sales compared to Naruto, One Piece, and Bleach, and for all these reasons, that is why Bleach is part of the Big Three.